Do you guys remember that trend where it was mostly on TikTok? Like the girlfriend would ask the boyfriend how often he thinks about the Roman Empire. And then he'd say something like, I don't know, twice a week. And they'd freak out because it's like, why are you thinking about the Roman Empire so much? And then other people would take that and they'd be like, well, my Roman Empire is this. My Roman Empire is that. Well, I'm here to tell you right now, my Roman Empire is FC Barcelona. If you've ever taken a history class, you'll have seen that empires will rise and then empires will fall. Such is the way of life. Even the Roman Empire, regarded as one of the most powerful empires in the history of the world. It ruled over 45 million people, over 2 million square miles, had the biggest city, the biggest military, and even that came crashing down after a little bit of overspending on the military, some economic struggles, and a little bit of over-reliance on slave labor. Founded in 1899, FC Barcelona have almost always been one of the pinnacles of footballing excellence. They won the first recorded Spanish top division title back in 1929, and most recently won it just a year ago under Xavi, and quite a few in between. But it really never reached a peak like Pep Guardiola's tiki-taka Barcelona of the early 2010s. How have Barcelona gone from having maybe one of the greatest teams in the history of the sport, so dominant with the likes of Lionel Messi, Sergio Busquets, Xavi, Iniesta, and so many others, to going billions of dollars in debt? The problems really began when Neymar left for PSG, because it left Barcelona with a big gap to fill at left wing. But if you're going to lose one of the best players in the world, you might as well get more money for any player that any club has ever gotten for a player in the history of football. 222 million euros from Neymar's release clause, which is more than enough money to replace that at left wing and improve the squad all around. The problem was that there was a man named Josep Bartomeu who was in charge of all of that money. It's kind of like if you put me in charge of like the Dallas Cowboys and the coach said, I need a fullback, and I'd be like, I don't know, Frimpong's in form. I don't know how that's going to help us beat the Patriots on week 7, but that's kind of how Bartomeu ran his club. And so when he went out to look for a winger and he found Ousmane Dembele from Borussia Dortmund, he offered 80 million euros, but Borussia Dortmund said, we're not going to go under 150 million euros. So instead of looking elsewhere for a different winger or haggling with Dortmund, he was just like, okay, I'll spend 150 million euros on Ousmane Dembele, which leaves us with not quite that much left from that Neymar deal. And Ousmane Dembele, I don't know if you guys are really caught up with Barcelona's lore, but he really cost them quite a bit, especially in the Champions League, and then decided to be injured for a majority of his career at Barcelona, and then forced a move to actually PSG. Bartomeu then made another huge name signing with Felipe Coutinho, but it didn't really make any sense because Messi was already playing in a central role, which meant that Coutinho had to play out over on the left where he was uncomfortable, and after underperforming in that position, he got sat on the bench and then sent out on loan to Bayern Munich, in which he contributed to one of the most embarrassing losses in the history of Barcelona by scoring 2 goals against the club that owned him in an 8-2 win for Bayern Munich in the Champions League. Coutinho was then sold for 20 million euros to Aston Villa, 115 million euros less than what Bartomeu bought him for at Barcelona. But it doesn't stop there, because they also bought Antoine Griezmann, a striker/attacking mid from Atletico Madrid, for 130 million euros. And they ended up using him where? No, not striker, not attacking mid, again forcing him to play most of his time out on the left, where he's just not comfortable. And then they sold him back to Atletico Madrid for 22 million euros. And that ended up losing Barcelona another 110 million euros. It is just bad business. Bartomeu, at the exact same time, was also offering huge wage deals to players like Luis Suarez, Gerard Piqué, Sergio Busquets, and Jordi Alba, which led Barcelona's wage bill to be bigger than any other club in the world. Barcelona was also caught lying about tax documents about Neymar's transfer, and Josep Bartomeu was caught up in a scandal known as Barçagate. And before things could get any worse from him, Bartomeu hung up his boots and went down with an even worse career at Barcelona than his signing Ousmane Dembele did. Now, with comedic timing, we introduce COVID-19. routine to the spiraling demise of Barcelona's financials after already being over $1 billion in debt. Barcelona now gain no financial help from ticket sales for matches or from tourism, and things are looking bad. But this is where Joan Laporta steps in place of Josep Bartomeu, and despite inheriting probably the worst scenario a president could possibly inherit at a football club, he comes up with a plan with several financial levers that he needs to pull in order to get this club at least slightly back on track.
Pull the lever, Kronk.
But before we can even get to these financial levers, we have to address one more issue that was created by Josep Maria Bartomeu, which was related to the FFP, La Liga's financial fair play rules. And since Bartomeu decided to shamelessly also extend the contracts of players like De Jong, Langley, and others, it made Joan Laporta's life so much more difficult, because La Liga's financial fair play rules state that you can only spend 25% of your revenue on the wages, which Bartomeu completely ignored, which meant that Joan Laporta needed to get rid of so many big-name players in order to even be following this rule, which meant that the likes of players like Ivan Rakitic and Luis Suarez needed to be out the door for peanuts, just in order to get the wage bill down. And even though he tried his hardest to keep Lionel Messi at the club, and Lionel Messi tried his hardest as well by agreeing to cut his wages in half in order to help Barcelona follow the FFP rules, it still wasn't enough, and they lost Lionel Messi as well. After offloading these players, cutting wages, and doing deals like the Arthur and Pjanic swap with Juventus, they were able to fix their books just enough to be abiding by the FFP rules by La Liga, but that was such a minor issue in comparison to the debt that they are facing, so Joan Laporta needed to start pulling these levers. And the first one was to sell the TV rights, 25% of which, to a company named Sixth Street for the next 25 years. This was a quick cash injection of over 500 million euros to the club, but the long-term effects are yet to be seen, because now 25% of their TV revenue for the next quarter of a century is going to another company instead of their club. So even though they do get a lot of money right now, the actual value of what they gave away is so much more than 500 million euros. Joan Laporta then pulled the second lever, selling 49% of Barcelona Studios, which is the media outlet for Barcelona, to two different companies, meaning about half of all of the revenue coming in from every single media outlet by Barcelona is now going to another company. But in turn, it did inject another 180 million euros immediately into the club. The third lever was worth nearly 300 million euros, and much more positive for Barcelona because they didn't need to give up a quarter century of revenue. Instead, they did need to give up some branding rights, hence the Spotify Camp Nou. But this sponsorship helped them immensely. But not all of this money is going straight to the $1.2 billion in debt. The brand of Barcelona is based on the success of the club, and they need to operate at an elite level with elite players, so they still need to spend money on these players. So they bring in players like Robert Lewandowski, Ronald Araujo, Gavi, and Rafinha, who they're all on some pretty big wage bills. And with players like Lewandowski on the wrong side of 30, with players like Ter Stegen on the wrong side of 30, they're still going to need to be bringing in some players with some pretty high transfer fees to protect the elite brand of Barcelona. Or these deals, like the Spotify deal, will not be getting extended after it's over, or getting another deal of that nature. Instead, the brand and these deals will be worth much less. And so there's still a lot of problems that need to be solved here by Joan Laporta in Barcelona that were left behind by Josep Bartomeu. The future of this club is at risk because a lot of the revenue that they're going to get over the next quarter of a century is going to third-party companies who have a big investment in the club now. They did all of that for a quick cash injection, which in turn probably saved their club. But is it in too deep? Well, we don't know yet, but it's not looking good. If you made it to the end of the video, comment Barca is in deep doo-doo, and make sure to subscribe to Nitro Football. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.